I just want to come back to the broader issue that the Deputy Dillon has raised. And, you know, look, I accept that this bill is far from perfect. There are technical issues, and the Department have flagged those. There are language issues. There are logistical challenges in relation to the way the legislation is drafted. And we're the very first ones to hold up our hands and say this needs to be amended. But the question is, in principle, should we have legislation in this area? And that's the decision ultimately that this committee will have to look at. Now, the reality is that the European Commission and the Charter of Rights of People with Autism 27 years ago, in 1996, set out that there should be rights specifically for people with autism, and that should be enforced by legislation. That's 27 years ago. We're looking at this. Now, the bill that we have before us is drafted by the former Minister in the Department of Children, the former Minister in the Department of Health, a parent of a person with autism, who knows the challenges and issues there, knows the legal constraints that are there. And, you know, we're talking now about the National Autism Innovation Strategy. And Cathaoirleach, remember that we delayed the passage, all of us as members of Dáil Éireann, delayed the passage of this bill for 12 months to facilitate the department coming forward with it. We're now 2 years later, and the department say that they hope to have this in the next few months in draft form. And I don't contest the commitment of the department in relation to this. I fully support them. I know they have lots of challenges within the department, across the disability remit, across the department as a whole, and things are not easy to try and progress things. But the reality of it is, we are now 2 years down the road, and we're a minimum of another 6 to 8 months before this becomes reality. And I know from sitting in Cabinet, dealing with the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, it was only because the politicians drove this forward that it moved forward. The reason that we have an assessment of need process at all, which again was opposed by the departments that were in place at the time, was we as parliamentarians decided that people needed legal rights. And the reality is, whether we like it or not, is that any rights and services that people have got in this country with any form of disability is because of legislation that was introduced. Now, we know in terms of the Disability Act 2005, the assessment of needs, look, we could spend all day talking about it here, how the system is falling down. But what would happen, Cathaoirleach, if it wasn't enshrined in law? What would be the chances of people getting access to this service today? They wouldn't, and that's the reality of it. And the question, I think, here is, would it be better or worse across the broad spectrum of disabilities, and in relation to specifically people with autism, would it be better if there is a piece of legislation enshrining rights for them or not? We would contend that enshrining this in law, with the amendments that the department have suggested, with the amendments that we have proposed, with engagement with the parents, that it would be far better than not having a law in place. And sadly, history has proven us right, that down through the years, it's only after legislation has been put in place that we've seen movement in terms of the delivery of services. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.